If they've persecuted me, they will also persecute you. Jesus' words. And Paul saw the truth of Jesus' words. As a follower of Jesus, Paul experienced much persecution and tribulation. And isn't it true we see the same today? Satan still challenges the integrity of Jehovah's people. In fact, the Bible indicates that Satan will increase his attacks on Jehovah's people in these last days. And we see this happening. As we look at the attacks being made on Jehovah's people around the world, we think of our brothers in Eritrea, our brothers in Korea, in Russia, other places, and even smaller attacks that we may not even personally hear about. Truly, Jesus' words are being fulfilled today. But the question we want to consider today is, what about us personally? See, the text says that if they've persecuted me, Jesus said, they will persecute you. In 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12, it says, all those desiring to live with godly devotion will be persecuted. So that means we're not exempt. And as our text highlights, things can quickly turn. Sometimes it's outright persecution from governments, opposition from family members. In other cases, it may be efforts to block our work, to hamper a theocratic project or another initiative. How will we do when faced with persecution and opposition? Now, it's easy to say trust in Jehovah, and we know we need to do that, but what does that mean? How do we know what decisions to make? What's the right decision? What's not the right decision? Are there principles that can guide us? Well, let's consider three of them. The first one is that the apparent easy solution out of a situation may not be the right solution. Look at Isaiah chapter 30, and we'll look at a solution that the kings of Israel and Judah fell back on from time to time. Isaiah chapter 30, and let's read verses 1 and 2. It says, woe to the stubborn sons, declares Jehovah, who carry out plans that are not mine, who make alliances but not by my spirit. In order to add sin to sin, they go down to Egypt without consulting me, to take shelter under Pharaoh's protection, and to take refuge in the shadow of Egypt. You see, the nation thought it was a good solution to enlist Egypt's aid to keep off the Babylonians and others. That seemed to be the best choice. And we saw over and over again the unfaithful kings of Israel and Judah did that. They chose to strike deals with Jehovah's enemies to protect them from other enemies of Jehovah. And so when under attack, when facing opposition, we too may be encouraged to strike a deal, maybe a bit of a compromise to lessen the pressure. But now, in other times, we notice that Paul and others, they did appeal to government officials, or they appealed to Caesar, and Jehovah blessed that. So what's the lesson? Well, the lesson is that we need to make sure that we're following a course that are plans that Jehovah has, that are backed by his Spirit. So we need to prayerfully make sure that the arrangement that we're working out is Jehovah's will. And to remember that the logical solution from man's perspective may not always be Jehovah's solution. Second principle, and that is to not become distracted from our main focus and our main work. And we have a good example of that when considering Nehemiah. As we know, Nehemiah was blocked by enemies of Jehovah who was trying to stop him from completing his theocratic project. Look, for example, in Nehemiah chapter 6 and verse 2. Nehemiah 6 and verse 2, and it says, Sanballat and Geshem immediately sent this message to me, come, and let us set a time to meet together in the villages of the valley plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. Now, the distance between Jerusalem and the valley plain of Ono was about 35 miles, or about 50 kilometers away. Sanballat was not looking to get together with Nehemiah to work out how they could help them. He was scheming to divert the work, to slow down the work, to oppose the work. And Nehemiah knew what they were up to. Notice what he says in verse 3. He says, I sent messengers to them saying, I am engaged in a great work, and I am not able to come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come to you? See, Nehemiah did not allow himself to become distracted from his main assignment, from the work that he had been given to do. Now, when that didn't work, his opposers tried to get him to choose a solution that would harm his reputation, bring reproach on Jehovah's name. Look over in verse 10. See, they says, well, come into the temple. Let's shut the doors of the temple because they're coming to kill you. Well, look at verse 13. He says, he had been hired to frighten me and cause me to sin, so they would have grounds to damage my reputation in order to reproach me. Well, see, likewise, at times we may be offered solutions out of a situation or to relieve pressure from opposition, which will distract us from our primary work, our service to Jehovah. Or it may be an initiative that's a little bit in a gray area. Yes, everybody does it, but it's a gray area, and it could damage our reputation or bring reproach on Jehovah's name. So again, what do? Will we seek Jehovah's direction? Will this solution distract us from our main commission? How will it appear to onlookers? What will it do to Jehovah's name? Now, these first two principles do not mean that we do not do anything. And that leads to our third principle. And that is, we do what we can from a practical standpoint. We give Jehovah something to bless, and then we wait on Jehovah. And the account of Hezekiah is a beautiful example of that. We have the drama at our convention this year, where the ruthless king of Assyria was determined to take Jerusalem. Rabshakeh taunted Hezekiah, tried to get the people to surrender, to make a deal with Assyria. What did Hezekiah do? Well, he displayed wisdom and military strategy while waiting on Jehovah. He did what he could to give Jehovah something to bless. Remember what they did? They went and they diverted the water sources outside the city so that if there was a siege, the Assyrians would have trouble getting water. They strengthened the city's fortification, the walls. They made missiles in abundance and shields. They did what they could, but they trusted in Jehovah. Remember, Hezekiah said to the people, as recorded in 2 Chronicles 32, 7 and 8, he says, be courageous and strong. There's more with us than there is with them. So they did what they could, but they relied on Jehovah for the real solution. And interestingly, in this case, Jehovah did not use anything of what they did. He provided an angel to deliver them. So likewise, when facing persecution today, facing opposition today, we do what's in the power of our hand to do, while keeping in mind those first two principles, and then we see what Jehovah works out in our behalf. So what's the lesson for us? Well, the lesson is that in the face of persecution, when we're going through opposition, the way through the situation may not be clear. It may not be readily apparent. But look for principles that can help us to make good decisions. And really, it all boils down to our most effective means of dealing with persecution and opposition. Notice what it says in Psalm 9 and verse 10. Psalm 9 and verse 10. It says, those knowing your name will trust in you. You will never abandon those seeking you, O Jehovah. Those knowing your name will trust in you. We know Jehovah. We know Jehovah's name. We know what his name means. We know that Jehovah can become, he can cause us to become, he can cause any of his creation to become whatever is needed to fulfill his purpose. We just need to trust in him. He will never abandon us. So yes, as followers of Jesus, we will be persecuted. We will face opposition. When those days come, how will we do? Well, may these and other principles help us to make good decisions, and may we ultimately trust in and wait on Jehovah, convinced that he will never abandon us.